There is nothing left save for fear, an elastic instinct that is protective yet subjects you to the mal-profound and the unknown. Your sense of self fleeing primordial powers which threaten to envelop you entirely. That which you comprehend and cannot understand were together. Knowledge and falsehood all participate in the same shadow play. There is nothing left but the instinct, a mark of trauma. Your surroundings are dark and cold, your host equally unforgiving. The world cruelly mocks your victories, always polishing new bedrocks for the inevitable fall. Paralyzed by what you are, limited by who you could be, earthly and celestial powers conspire to disintegrate your mortal frame. You cannot sleep because the powers that be control your creatures mysterious and ordinary have colonized every space once open to proprietorship. There is no choice but to fight. Nothing to abate the malice but your fear, the instinct, the drive to kill that which has encaged your soul in a scarlet mist, the phenomenological prison which has no dimension or mass to strike.
A creature of pure death and darkest shadow. Child of Baal, what have you become?
Such is the fate of a retail worker in the prevailing economic order, and a child born of murder, the very essence of that which takes life. Baldur's Gate 2 delivers a story that is simultaneously regarded as legendary, but goes underrated in terms of its exact thematic content. We'll be analyzing the Nietzschean and existentialist themes undergirding its entire umwelt. Yet, I have to confess my heresy. I don't like structure. So now it's time for something completely different. Baldur's Gate 2 is an isometric party-based computer-based role-playing game that... Baldur's Gate 2 is the historical product of... Okay, Baldur's Gate 2 simply is. Now that we have thrown history and definitions out of the window, we can play with the semiotic slice called Baldur's Gate 2, this time it's personal.
That's a periphery album.
It is a Dungeons and Dragons simulator par excellence mixed in with the unit solidification and micromanagement intensity of StarCraft 1. As to say, there are rules, very rigid rules at that. There's no human dungeon master to roll the dice in your favor, but you can bend around them with the kinesthetic art of intense micro. Add to that metagame knowledge and the feeling that no character, despite any build, under no circumstances, is truly useless, ultimately granting you more fluidity and freedom of motion than even the most permissive dungeon master. There is always a formula written into the encounter design, a creative way to escape from a seemingly hopeless gambit. This is the essence of what makes Baldur's Gate 2 so special, from all perspectival loci. For that reason, story and gameplay rhythms sing together in harmony. If Baldur's Gate 2 is a direct sequel to Baldur's Gate, with themes building on top of each other, even character levels being preserved as the world literally expands to represent characters of distinct categories in a Dungeons and Dragons setting, why am I starting with the sequel? Why not the first game? Why not the whole series at once? I would tell you, but this video is fairly non-linear. It should suffice to say that Baldur's Gate plays well as an anthology, even a series that you play backwards. Information pushed forward or backward in the chronology hits all the same notes. It's just a question of whether you're finding the dots or connecting the dots. To engage with Baldur's Gate is to delve into its sequel as if it were the be-all and end-all of the series. For that is exactly how it functions. With character monsters that are bigger than ever before. No, I'm serious, that was actually a late 90s marketing theme featuring
Large and detailed character pixels on the screen was impressive.
And a story greater than Come and See.
It's not greater than Come and See.
Characters promised to be edgy and moodier. BioWare and Black Isle set off to add another dimension to a game mythology that was already dedicated to inverting and making fun of familiar Forgotten Realms setting. That element of humor, the playfulness of an insider who has developed a critical eye, the Nietzschean evil eye, is very much present in the second game, but it's all coated with a far more sinister tone. The stakes are ambiguous and personal. The factions you face are impure and shady. Athkatla is the city of coin, the pre-capitalist and mercantile city that glorifies itself on its riches, but wouldn't immediately direct you to the slums, unless, of course, you're too poor to afford a magic license. That is, if you're not sent off to a rape dungeon, known as Spellhold first.
The girl they brought in, she's a cute one, isn't she?
I do believe I'll have to practice some enchantment spells on that one.
The mythologization of Baldur's Gate is an interesting topic, one that I won't cover here, that is planned 5 videos ahead, but it will suffice to say that the cultural legend surrounding Baldur's Gate beats a stronger heart than the isolated title itself. Not, of course, to people like me, who have been replaying the series annually, keeping myself well immersed into all idiosyncrasies, the song of motion that this game sings. No, what I am talking about is how the normals receive the title. Those decaying, mindless beasts that constitute your friend circle, making you feel more lonely than you could ever be. I mean those perfectly legitimate, although degenerate lives. I mean the nomads, the nomads, yes, the explorers, of emptiness and debasement. Such people need not remember how it feels to play the game, or the exact plot beats and themes resonating throughout the trilogy. They just remember it as a solid formula, a canary in the coal mine, painting the way forward for the industry. Even if they install the game, play it for 5 minutes, and quickly uninstall the game to play Mass Effect 2, they are left with a feeling of wonder and respect, despite the fact that the mechanics of Baldur's Gate 2 would set off many alarm bells of game design YouTube, or cause people to whine about insufficient tutorials and difficulty spikes. There's a certain je ne sais quoi that stays their destructive tongues, from the absolutely uncriticizable original soundtrack to the textured user interface design and mimetic standouts like David Warner's voice acting. The entry succeeds at being more than the sum of its parts. We, however, are interested in not just the additive calculation, the mythology, but every foundational detail of this Western classic. Let us draw a philosophical distinction, one grounded in truth and falsehood at once. On one hand, we have a perfect form of Baldur's Gate 2, its idealization, which may as well exist in Platonic heaven, or at least as a non-spatial temporally located abstract object. We can consider this the Platonist view of Baldur's Gate 2. We could also naturalize the form of Baldur's Gate 2 to locate it within a property-bearing substance as a feature of the natural world, to imitize the just mentioned form. It may not even require notions like perfection. This is the Aristotelian approach. Why draw this distinction? Because people indirectly use it all the time. We can be good Aristotelians and beat Baldur's Gate 2 into an emergent network and foundational structure that develops Baldur's Gate 2 as a continual process, or we can formalize Baldur's Gate 2 as a whole, as it stands, sui generis, in perfect form. The Aristotelian method is an anticipation of reductive science, even if contemporary Aristotelians are hardly reductionists. The Platonist method is quite sublime and resists strict reduction. It loves art and the spirit. To contrast these two approaches is to imagine the artistic Socrates suggested by Nietzsche in his youthful book, The Birth of Tragedy. You would not be mistaken for misreading this as autistic Socrates. I'm here to state, not argue, but state that the reason Baldur's Gate 2 feels like more than the sum of its parts is exactly because there are no mechanical parts to add into a sum. There is only its purest form, that is to say, its identity qua itself, a kind of tautological existence that gains dynamic cultural meaning but never loses its stable identity. For its identity conditions are, in fact, internal. Rather than finding logical and social relationships that are themselves held together by primitive grounding relationship, as if we were Jonathan Schaffer speaking to Quine, we may instead mythologize Baldur's Gate 2 as one entry, completely irreducible and distinct. Yet that doesn't mean we have to do away with the ground, quite the opposite. While taking this Platonist approach to Baldur's Gate 2, we can still consider the Aristotelian approach to be scientifically useful fiction, a way to investigate its purest form by way of secondary instantiation. Just as Baal left the shadow of his legacy on Faerûn, so too does Baldur's Gate 2 leave a shadow on the cultural landscape, one that can be analyzed with but not reduced to Aristotelian tools. We can compartmentalize the method of a good enemy in its proper order of rank, just as Nietzsche would suggest in The Gay Science. The moral earth, too, is round.
The antipodes, too, have the right to exist.
Revealing that the antagonisms between Plato and Aristotle are not contradictory but supplementary. When the Ballspawn turns into the Slayer, the physical avatar of murder itself, only after their divine essence has been stripped away from them, form has been liberated from substance, but at the same time substance was developing and preserving its essential identity all along. The Aristotelian science of death carried with it a divine Platonist philosophy. The methods and symbolism of murder can be used to
protect the weak that fell because of you.
Or to eternally recur Nietzsche, cause and effect can be swapped underneath you, with nobody being the wiser. Only, indeed, will the uselessly wise ever note the difference, much like Elminster prattling on whimsically about the Ballspawn's destiny, while refusing to interfere with its development.
Ye have done what ye have done, there is no denying. Reasons for which are thine, and I trust they are valid, if ye believe them to be. This is my question, Jehan. Did you do the right thing?
Undoubtedly. I would do as such again without hesitation.
Welcome to the footnote section of this video essay.
Such a randomly imposed structure makes you feel like a participant in advanced academic discourse, with the weight of complicated argumentation and extensive research behind it. You may also detect a hint of irony, a certain J-reg timbre to the pseudo-interlude. Well, you'd be half correct, but hiding behind irony and meta-awareness is for people who've binged It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. What must be clarified is that, much like a cleric who casts straw upon holy might, or a techno-pagan that has read too much Eric Steinhardt, I'll buff my words and comment on an interesting paper entitled On What Grounds What. First, it's a good paper. Second, it draws the trivial distinction between existence questions, a method championed by Quinn and to a lesser extent Carnap, where what exists takes primacy in metaphysics, as held over a more traditional, or at least Aristotelian approach where what exists is not necessarily primary. How something exists is instead prioritized. There is indeed no non-question begging reason to side with Quinn over Aristotle on this issue. Just so, the fact that Baldur's Gate 2 exists as a culture mythology is indisputable to my transcendent Platonist eyes, but how it exists is up for grabs, as it were, a quasi-scientific question that interrogates its content and finds divine rays of light shining out of the crevice as a hammer at the bedrock of truth. Just as Nietzsche comments in his preface to Beyond Good and Evil, will to truth is not a pure motivation, but one spawned from a complicated series of drives that, quite fortunately for us, is ultimately truth conducive. We can consider this to just be the anti-Puttinga worldview, where Puttinga would argue that evolution unguided by God would have no tendency to guide us toward truth-conducive cognitive states. A good Nietzschean would say that our tendency toward untruth is, when remembering that the antipodes have their right to exist, a baptism of truth in disguise. Our fundamental errors and sparks of unreason are, in the end, a clarification of reason. The natural world order guides us by one way or another, intentional or non-intentional, into the ascendance offered by stabilized civilization. Just as planar spirits in Forgotten Realms gods take interest in the Ballspawn by the time Shadow of Om rolls around, we create our fate with insufficient material dynamically withheld and provided by the gods, of course, but it is their own will to truth that leads them to cement the foundations of their potential fall. To take fascination with mortal interest is to participate in a peculiar form of death drive, to allow dynamism to reign once more, as a victory over boredom and stagnation. This, quite interestingly, is how Baal, the Lord of Murder, came to power in the first place. He fought for the title only to find that the lord who reigned under his tyrannical realm relinquished power willingly. He was bored by ruling everything. Recognizing the nihilism present within authoritarian power at his soul, as his last act of revenge, he cursed Bal with it, and now Bal's children are often driven mad with that youthful craving, and so the evil within us communicates this contradiction within our very dreams, as not Ilmilin comments in the first dream sequence of the video game. These things always mean something, don't they? Echoing Nietzsche in Chapter 5 of Human All Too Human, that we find crystallized ennoblement only through creative degeneration.
Life is strength. This is not to be contested. It seems logical enough. You live, you affect your world. But is it what you need? You are different inside. This woman lives and has strength of a sort. She lost her parents to plague, her husband to war, but she persevered. Her farm has prospered, her name is respected, and her children are fed and safe. She lived as she thought she should. And now she is dead. Her land will be divided, her children will move on, and she will be forgotten. She lived a good life, but she had no power. She was a slave to death. I wonder if you are destined to be forgotten. Will your life fade in the shadow of greater beings? You are born of murder, the very essence of that which takes life. You have power if you wish it. Really, but the consequences are so very real. Your actions affect so many others than yourself. You will come to realize how little choice you have. You will do what you must, become what you must, or others will pay for your cowardice. You will accept the gifts offered to you.
One may suspect that these philosophical toys are red herrings, a distraction from the issue at hand. I wish you were wrong. For while there is no doubt that a cultural mythology surrounding Baldur's Gate 2 exists, it is well respected and well regarded even by people who have never even seen footage of it. Precisely how it exists and what grounds its emerging kinesthetic network has metastatic implications on game design discourse itself. You are surely familiar with notions like a video game being archaic or the controls feeling dated. These statements are never all that meaningful on their own terms. They report the psychological state of the speaker. That the game feels bad is usually synonymous with I am used to a contemporary gameplay flow that is alien to an earlier time. So, quite ironically, those likely to immediately praise Baldur's Gate 2 with an uncritical eye would, if they were to play it, immediately summon 1001 complaints about its apparent faults. For they are not used to borderline Dungeons & Dragons rule set simulation, nor unit micromanagement, nor permanent companion death, unpatched metagame hacking, or even the loose itemization structure that allows you to break the balance of a playthrough at your whim. The platonic form of Baldur's Gate 2 is well established. The Aristotelian inquiry, as it exists so far, is woefully inadequate and littered with all too modern prejudices. Nietzsche ranted quite heavily about the poisonous effect of modern ideas, not because modernity was an ipso facto problem, far from it, the free spirit is the most modern of all moderns, but instead a thoughtless attribution of progress to a progressively shaped idea was cognitively harmful. So too does this find resonance in video game commentary. Far too often we are met with the naive notion that the strange, unfamiliar, and the old is a bygone era for a good reason. There's far too much rationalism in this mythos, even for a rationalistic mystic like myself. The notion that there is a justification for why certain design trends were abandoned and why others persisted. This naive faith in the wheels of progress could not be more wrong-headed. It has damaged our discourse almost irreparably. It's not just a reference.
The sense and reference distinction is false.
But a conceptual volcano waiting to erupt all over the victims trapped within the dungeons of untruth and cultural necrosis. Hidden within this myth in a fantastically Ordurian way is the revelation that you are slaves to your favorite YouTubers and soy-faced, corporate
I am trying to
careerists.
say careerists.
A seasonal cycle where the only cause for the continuation of the semiosphere is your very souls. So concerned with red herrings like microtransactions and corporate greed, open world cancer games like Diablo 4 get lavished with praise for what reasons exactly? None. Critique is only leveraged against so-called anti-consumer practices. There's only culturally retarded myth perpetuating itself. A discourse without content. We don't even require a vacuum to become this silent with our words. As such, I have a bone to pick with game design trends. Let's take the Outer Worlds for example. A large portion of the team are old guard industry veterans who worked on projects like Fallout 1. Sounds good, right? Not exactly. They had been corrupted by contemporary views on quest encounter and UX design. So concerned are we with the opinions of underpaid playtesters, ingenious and novel concepts get sliced by the corporate bureaucracy into a mutilation of itself. Yet even people on the dev team are no longer opposed to this. An orthodoxy is being created around game design. It is aggressively concerned with concepts like not wasting the player's time and accessibility. The Outer Worlds was a wonderful theme park with a few brilliant ideas sprinkled here and there, but it lacked a certain obsidian magic people have come to expect from the company. That's because the team wasn't looking to create obsidian magic. They wanted to create a fairly safe RPG that adheres to now conventional design standards that they have come to wholeheartedly adopt as useful and true. As people are immersed into team workflows and the industry at large, they almost by an invisible process become persuaded that the present flow of progress is the correct bandwagon to hop onto. The technocratic sense that everything practical happens for a reason rears its ugly head here. The notion that just because you could come up with an argument structure in favor of an existing trend, said trend has some actual right to be there. I am here to radically assert that that is all nonsense. We should be embracing the free form and experimental structure of a young and immature industry, but instead we already suffer under the corporate stranglehold. One not even entirely initiated from the top down by these institutions. For their own part, consumer expectations are lazy and disappointing. The intermediate digital commentariat do not help the state of affairs whatsoever. From buzzwords like diegetic design and emergent gameplay, to concepts like player agency and immersion, we all speak with a deficient vocabulary here. This is to be expected. We are still in the process of discovering exactly how to speak about video games. Still, we are clearly on the wrong path, and the mythological success of Baldur's Gate 2 is a great exemplar of that. For, despite how terrible our conceptual paintings and methods of analysis may be, Baldur's Gate 2's legendary status remains unchallenged. That is, in a vacuum, just how it should be, but people have not valued it for the right reasons. What would your average player complain about when returning to Baldur's Gate 2? They would note that party members can conflict with the ball spawn, fight each other, and leave at any time. The fact that XP gains are non-unitary would hardly go unnoticed. I'm sure the exceptional controls and kinesthetic flow would be called archaic. Low quantities of voice acting would be a key concern as well. The lack of an extensive in-game tutorial, invisible or not, would have people raging about the game not teaching you anything about its mechanics. Hidden within the idiosyncrasies of the Dungeons & Dragons 2 advanced system is a classic example of this. A negative armor score is better, and you bet it is bad game design to let the player find that out for themselves. But why? Is freeform experimentation and using your brain so discouraged by game design trends? Sure, there are market pressures at work, publishers have strict and inflexible deadlines, studios depend upon investment capital to keep themselves afloat. There will always be some concession to consumer expectation, else your enterprise is an unjustifiable risk. Yet that is not even a correct market analysis. The game industry is not just artistically impoverished, but hardly possesses business sense. Many studios appeal to the widest possible audience, which is a far cry from optimal marketing strategy. You cannot outperform an entry like Call of Duty, which takes up so much mindshare in its respective strengths. You need to find and define your niche market. That is, after all, why we still have financially successful CRPGs today. It is why Demon Souls could take many creative risks, widely seen to be suicidal at the time, but birthed a whole new affectation on the action-adventure genre. It is a mixture of baked-in game design ideology and childish business sense that keeps us from utilizing the proverbial sandbox to its full potential. Yet Baldur's Gate 2 is still here. It hasn't disappeared from our catalogs. It has received extensive updates through Quinn's Fix Pack and the Enhanced Edition. It is an incredibly long game with a disgusting amount of non-trivial content to offer. Nothing is stopping us from revisiting and, in part, living the past.
She resists. She clings to her old life as though it actually matters. She will learn. It is a portrait of what has happened and what may happen. Do you cling to the past, or can you see through the pain? You feel the potential within, don't you? Will you cringe from what you know you want, what you can take as your own? You know what you want. It is you, after all, which has brought us to the dream. Nothing is real. Yet.
In his essay on the use and abuse of history for life, found in the Untimely Meditations, Nietzsche contrasts the historical man with the superhistorical man. This acts as an interesting difference point from what we can call historicist interpretations of Nietzsche, the view that our concepts and justifications are historically mediated and, as such, attention to history and causality is necessary to interrogate or utilize them, as opposed to the view that propositional content is independent of these causal events. Rather than making our discourses the impossible bitch of history, as many readers and eventual champions of philosophical historicism did, Nietzsche actually twisted the historical approach against itself. It is useful to engage in doses of historical amnesia once in a while in order to discover childlike newness and appreciation of the world. A historical man is world-weary and sees nothing new under the sun. The superhistorical man takes eternal lessons from history, studying its iconography and symbolism to move culture forward. It is amusing to see this play itself out in Nietzsche, for it moves him closer to the so-called Platonism that Nietzsche himself derided, and that many continental philosophers are disgusted by today. As such, I could be considered to be promoting a Nietzschean Platonist approach to Baldur's Gate 2. We neither want to be uneducated barbarians with no sense of history pertaining to the video game industry, but neither should we fail to extract mythos from Baldur's Gate 2, to interrogate and savor its contents as a way of appreciating present-day innovation and envisioning the future. As such, one should not concern themselves with whether a mechanic is dated or outdated. A mechanic should be analyzed by its own properties and the possible context in which it could be applied and modified. There is nothing fundamentally dated about an isometric camera view, or death counts, or fail states. Contrariwise, there is nothing prima facie illegitimate about slow movement speeds, director's cut camera angles, and non-violent gameplay. Tracing outwards into infinity, there are only spirals of potential here. On a case-by-case basis, we should take our time to familiarize ourselves with how gameplay implementation feels, not subjecting ourselves to one initial brief and then dismissive take, but letting our neurophysiology settle into it as well. It is very important to learn how to immerse yourself into an era before you can truly understand this. Just as you shouldn't reject a movie for being filmed colorless black and white, so too would it be nonsensical to consider a complicated control scheme fundamentally archaic. People who value old game design trends are often accused of falling victim to nostalgia. Putting aside the fact that people who champion these game principles revisit entries that implement them regularly, thereby not associating them with any particular time in their life, it all sounds like projection from an art culture that is already too nostalgic. The inference is that, since there is a heavy amount of nostalgia already present within the discourse, then every positive appraisal of a technique left behind must be nostalgia-ridden. This is a fundamental mistake which dooms you to misunderstanding the past. It is a way to historicize something for its own sake, without attention to how it serves life and art. As Nietzsche notes in the aforementioned essay on history, scholars and critics can resemble the sterility of factory workshop logistics, working around the clock and turning everything they touch into a spiritually lifeless mockery of itself. All too often in our criticism, we engage in precisely that destructive mode, a kind of dark urge to destroy and tear something down. Rather than ennobling that which we experience, we look for ways to hyper-focus on its failures and faults. So afraid to enjoy ourselves, we profane that which was already whole to begin with, to service an unclear drive toward truth. Yet there is no reason that truth should be joyous. Hence the title of Nietzsche's arguably best book, The Gay Science. We have a choice about whether technological, scientific, and artistic voices should service or debase life. Does getting instantly killed because you didn't wait long enough for the find traps mechanic in Baldur's Gate 2 harm your life? Perhaps, minimally, if you have already internalized the perspective that failure states are bad. You may feel demotivated by the act, even if pressing quick load is just a button away. These minimalistic and no hand-holding design philosophies are certainly not for everybody, but there is a loud and passionate audience, ravenous and hungry for more. So let us put aside the excessively historical approach to video game design. All features of any game can stand on their own as devices not just of their time, but as information read by the eye of eternity. Baldur's Gate 2 shouts a narrative that was well regarded but surprisingly underrated by way of precise thematic depth. Planescape, Torment, and Knights of the Old Republic 2, which are in very many ways the same story, always take the spotlight here. Yet there are flashes of what we can call Torment-esque brilliance here. The first game starts with a generic Nietzsche quote, which is certainly no accident. Having gone through a Nietzsche scholarship phase myself circa 2018 to 2020, I have a renewed appreciation for the philosophical depth delivered by this title. I was delighted to discover with fresh eyes the delightful amount of references and philosophical motifs woven into just about every scene, which, by the way, came close to simply mastering 2D cinematography and presentation.
I cannot be caged. I cannot be controlled. Understand this as you die, ever pathetic, ever fools. Hello, little one. You and I have a great deal to do.
What are you planning?
Not to worry. Nothing worse than what I shall do to your friend.
We start off where the first game ended, as is quite traditional. The Baldur's Gate trilogy, we could call it, Throne of Ball ends the Ballspawn saga, is interesting because each new campaign is a net progression in the plot determined by discrete new escalations in the Dungeons and Dragons setting around you. The Ballspawn has grown in experience and power, so too does the scale and categories of dangers they face. To play through the whole series is to progress from a low-level D&D campaign featuring minor magic users and goblins to a high-level D&D campaign eventually featuring demigods and celestial beings. Many times an RPG, as well as action-adventure titles like God of War, will find an excuse to excise player powers, resetting the player from the beginning to repeat the same structural adventure all over again. Thanks to the well-defined levels of the AD&D 2 tabletop campaigns, there is little motivation to do that. There is a sense of continual overcoming present throughout the gameplay, which is threaded with the plot itself. Here we fully introduce our Nietzschean perspective.
It was already introduced.
From the moment you are quite literally thrown to wolves, far removed from the safety and comforts of Candlekeep, to facing off the Shattered One in his desperate and irrational exploit for indignant revenge, there's nothing shielding you but primal instinct. Removed from the civilizational convenience of shelter, stable access to food, and a reliable guard from banditry, we all, when tested, either find ourselves lacking. You crawl your way out of the thick woodland forest, uncovering a plot by a fellow Ballspawn, in fact, your actual brother, Saravok, who wishes to provoke the forces of Vol, while orchestrating an iron surge across the Sword Coast to enact a war of blood. The landscape itself would be used as the sacrificial ritual to unlock Baal's essence within him, thus ascending as the new Lord of Murder. Having stopped this plot in the first game, your heroics are cut short as assassins and mighty magics attack you under the cover of darkness. There is no remorse, no malice, nor apparent meaning behind their actions, only dread and the promise of torment to come. Irenicus's dungeon functions as a microcosmic introduction and mechanical emphasis of everything that truly makes an Infinity Engine game. We meet genie, dryads, mysterious guilds, vampires, and Dugier dwarves. A myriad of traps, puzzles, and hidden rewards beg us to explore them. The handcrafted environment is, as always, almost offensively beautiful. The writing and dialogue are at their peak. Imoen is extremely traumatized, speaking cognitive and emotional flashbacks in every scene, disturbing and antagonizing everybody who are not only older and more quote-unquote mature than Imoen, but actually didn't see the worst of it. It is heavily implied that Imoen received an extensive play of sadistic torture. The dark essence within her was far more difficult to bring out. She had to be made to see. When Jaheira, your now canonized companion from the first game, laments the death of her lover, Khalid, Imoen tries to console her, but it turns against itself.
He would cut and say, "Do you see?" Cut and say, "Do you see?"
She had watched Khalid's body be callously experimented on. She was frightened when you rested in the dungeon. Resting to restore spell slots and health is a routine feature of CRPGs. Insomniac and restless, the trauma of what she had been through is lurking behind her always. This is the grittiness we were promised so long ago, back in the late 90s pre-release marketing material, and it certainly delivers. We find clues about our developing antagonist through shades of his past impressing themselves all over his labyrinth. From the dryad sex slaves he carries with him,
not out of sadistic malice
per se, but frustration at his inability to remember warmth, who indicate subtly that Imoen too has felt his cold and mechanical activities. A genie gives us a prisoner dilemma question, indicating that celestial powers are taking a keen interest in stalking our every breath. Most interestingly, we see a bedroom that Irenicus keeps in perfect condition. Beautiful, delicate, a testament to a love, some mourned past he has lost. Even Imoen, the one who's experienced the misfortune of Irenicus' presence the most, had yet to behold it. She is nearly broken at the sight. She cannot believe that the same person maintaining a complex of horrible and malicious body horror experimentation is capable of this extreme polarization. Yet she can sense the emptiness, the hate and contempt that coats its superficial beauty. It means nothing to her, just as it barely means anything to Irenicus. She would burn it, but it doesn't even deserve that. There's nothing left for us here. Just as with Candlekeep kicking the Ballspawn and Imoen out to fend for themselves, there's nothing tangible in the past except for the constant itching memory, the promise of pain to resurface old wounds and weaken you. Or can they strengthen you? This is where Taoism and Nietzschean philosophy meet their middle path. One must become what one is, but forget all that weighs them down with the spirit of gravity. Kill the past if need be, but better yet, give your past a kind of contempt, an undeserving glance, a refusal to participate in the chains weighing down momentary existence. Hints of the Guild War to come, and a potential companion who comes bearing honesty in one hand and falsehood in the other, are present in this excellently crafted introductory level. Yoshino is an obviously suspicious creature, but he is useful and can spin a silver tongue at that. A mysterious enemy is attacking the entire base, yet are fighting skirmishes with a distinct vampire faction thrown into the mix. Interests and power plays of all varieties are centering around the Ballspawn, born as they are of chaos and murder. This culminates in an excellent cutscene to which the Dead Project, Baldur's Gate 2 Redux, certainly did it justice.
The tunnel slopes upward into the welcome glare of daylight. Such is your relief that you barely notice the debris at your feet, the remnants of a battle fought only moments before. Surveying the carnage, you hear a scream of rage, and a massive explosion collapses the passage behind you. The sounds of combat greet you as you struggle to your feet. The fight, it seems, is still going strong.
You dare to attack me here? Do you even know whom you face?
We know of your treachery, Irenicus! Where have you taken our brethren?
You know nothing of me. You know nothing of what I must do. You will suffer. You will all suffer.
Men, kill him!
So, godchild, you have escaped. You are more resourceful than I had thought.
You're not going to torture us any longer.
Torture? Silly girl, you just don't understand what I'm doing, do you?
I don't care what you're doing. Let us go.
I won't let you leave, not when I'm so close to unlocking your power.
We don't want anything from you.
Enough! I will no longer listen to the babbling of ignorant children.
This is an unsanctioned use of magical energy. All involved will be held. This disturbance is over.
Must I be interrupted at every turn? Enough of this!
This mage's power is immense. We must overcome him quickly.
Enough! I haven't the time for this.
You will cease your spell casting and come with us.
Your pathetic magics are useless. Let this end.
Even if we fall, our numbers are many. You will be overwhelmed.
You bore me, mageling. You may take me in, but you will take the girl as well.
What? No! I've done nothing wrong!
You have been involved in illegal use of magic. You will come with us.
I'm not going with him! I'm not! Help me! Please!
Irenicus is a truly broken man. As mentioned, his mortal name simply means Shattered One, and an intelligent mind who has cultivated talent, conviction, and twisted that into misguided vengeance. He requires no sympathy nor mustache-twirling villainy to be evil. His deeds are black because of what the fates have decreed him to become. There is only dispassion and callous coldness found in the knives he cuts into experimental subjects, the spells he uses to decimate cowed wizards and all that oppose him. Even the ballspawn is a person he can pity, from a distance, not truly despise. There is only hatred for his homeland, the act of sudden exile, a curse of mortality, and the forced reconstitution he endured. There is the memory and the fading memory. There is nothing but pain and a constant echo in his head, telling him to press onward, no matter the price. Irenicus is a compelling villain because he speaks, he breathes, and he walks with a focused kind of determination that knows no simple categories like villainy. He is everything and nothing. He is very powerful, but none too mortal. This failure to embrace his newfound mortality would be his undoing, and lends the ballspawn their own strength. When Irenicus, speaking through the asks why we are content to exist as mere mortals when the power of death lies within us, that misphrased question exposes his weakness. He is focused on talent and cultivated talent, essence, divinity, and power in its rawest sense. Yet that is a brute, uncontrolled understanding of power that often consumes the self. As Kreia would warn us in Knights of the Old Republic 2, it is a fall that few recover from. The ballspawn is not shaped by divine essence, but identity-defining circumstances. There is the power the ballspawn can direct with intent, will, and clear motivation. But Irenicus is consumed in the arcane powers that, much like ascending to godhood itself, makes all such splendor meaningless qua self. He has stared into the face of death itself, but does not understand the lessons implicitly taught. As Zhuangzi has said, once a man received his fixed bodily form, he clings onto it, waiting for the end. Is he not pathetic? Sweating and laboring to the end of his days and never seeing his accomplishment, utterly exhausting himself and never knowing where to look for rest. Can you help pitying him? I'm not dead yet, he says, but what good is that? The city of Athkatla and its outskirts are, of course, larger than Irenicus in the main plot. While Baldur's Gate 2 has an excellent and even under-recognized central narrative, there's nothing that defines Baldur's Gate more than containing 1,000 discursive side quests. All cleverly written, taking some well-known element of Forgotten Realms and illuminating it either by lights of the absurd or the extreme. Our main story is even paced like this. Imoen is quickly captured in a plot orchestrated by Irenicus, and both of them are destined to rot in Spellhold, a place of confinement for those either dangerous or politically expedient. Very few know where it is and how to get there. It will cost an ample amount of coin to get any shady guild to help you, motivating the player to intertwine the rescue plot and their questing together as one activity, gaining enough money and power to go after Irenicus and Imoen. Adventuring does not come at the cost of the urgency demanded by the surrounding events. They are one and the same. People who spam concepts like ludonarrative dissonance can lay their concerns to rest. We uncover plots within the Shadow Thieves Guild, find ourselves tricked by a destiny-cursed dragon into murdering righteous paladins under the illusion that they are monsters, even investigate a murder mystery layered once by ogres, twice by werewolves, and thrice by elemental shadow. We will meet new, strange, and powerful companions all along this journey. Littered throughout the game world are plenty of opportunities to take on the burdens of rare and interesting people, scavenge for genuinely exciting and build-defining loot, in an entirely unleveled world that quickly messages to you whether you're prepared for a given area or not. That is not, of course, to say that any encounter is genuinely level locked. If you do not have the right plus hit enchantment on your weapon to deal with a particular beast, you can always find or steal that at any character level. A certain scroll, a useful spell, or a clerical buff can make all the difference, even outright trivialize the encounter altogether. This brings me back to the point about how it is a cultural, not a game design issue that character death is seen as a demotivational factor. If you're discouraged by a modicum of friction and hands-off learning, classic CRPGs may not be for you, but you should definitely give them a second try to Taoistically unlearn the lessons contemporary game design trends have taught you. Convenience and fast-paced access to content is not necessarily a better experience. It may even cheapen and trivialize it. When the Souls-like title Sekiro was released, a certain copy pasta became popular, which communicated two messages, one intended by the author, another written into the fabric of culture. Much like how the Divide communicates unspoken semiotics between Ulysses and the courier in Fallout New Vegas, or the exile carrying the lessons of lore as a living beacon from Malachor, a planet crushed in gravity's fist, this meme-worthy paragraph reveals a fundamental value divide that finds itself at the center between all socioeconomic conflict. The original poster were responding to an infamous article in favor of cheating past Sekiro's difficult final boss. To quote in full, "You not only cheated the game, but yourself. You didn't grow. You didn't improve. You took a shortcut and gained nothing. You experienced a hollow victory. Nothing was risked, and nothing was gained. It's sad you don't know the difference." For people likely to utter phrases like, "it's just a video game," this sentiment is profoundly confusing at best and otherwise pathetic at worst. Such people do not understand the value of being good at some activity qua activity without the echo chambers of social approval or the economic certification that what you did had extrinsic worth. Many people operate on hollow values, things that will secure them resources or approval of their peers, but it does not often coincide with what they want or who they are. The phenomenon of needs and insular gamers highlight a generation of people aware that they have plenty of interest, but nothing to do with it per se. Not even esports is much of an outlet, for it is resigned to rehash titles like Apex Legends and League of Legends. There's just the dazzling refusal to believe that mastering the mechanics and rhythmic dance of a video game is anything by itself. It is for incels, virgins, losers, but all such herd opinions should be discarded by those with an independent wit and spirit. Per Zhuangzi, maybe you've never seen a wildcat or a weasel. It crouches down and hides, watching for something to come along. It leaps and races east and west, not hesitating to go high or low until it falls into the trap and dies in the net. Then again there's the yak, big as a cloud covering the sky. It certainly knows how to be big, though it doesn't know how to catch rats. Now you have this big tree and you're distressed because it's useless. Why don't you plant it in Not Even Anything Village or the field of Broad and Boundless, relax and do nothing by its side, or lie down for a free and easy sleep under it? Axes will never shorten its life, nothing can never harm it. If there's no use for it, how can it ever come to grief or pain? It matters not how a social system calculates your value, what matters is your actual value, an axiological statement of fact that can only be discovered by, yet is not entirely exemplified within thyself. This is where our Platonism and Nietzscheanism collide once more. Nietzsche would be incredibly hostile towards such a metaphysical state of affairs. It is the chief failing of the existentialists that they, for lack of a better phrase, utterly wimped out on positing the ontological commitments their views implied. To participate in an encounter puzzle of Baldur's Gate 2, particularly with the tactics and difficulty mod Sword Coast Stratagems installed, is to refine some craft that may be entirely self-contained within a particular kind of experience. It may not even help you with video games in general. Professional Counter-Strike players famously had trouble adapting to Quake Champions once it launched. There are as many forms of gameplay to master as there are motions with which to move your body. Here we may introduce the pinnacle mod available for the Baldur's Gate series as a whole, our just mentioned Sword Coast Stratagems, SES as a short phrase. Enjoying a development cycle of multiple decades, it has morphed into something highly modular and customizable, finally introducing its own difficulty slider that resonates with the core rules and insane distinctions of the original game. Difficulty setting 3 Tactical is about as vanilla friendly the mod gets. It does not excessively prepare the AI against player metagame knowledge and cheese, but it is still hostile to the freeform experimentation and wonderfully unbalanced gameplay of the original series, thus providing an engaging, intense experience that had me spamming my keyboard like a StarCraft professional and barely catching my breath. A few endgame thrown a ball expansion encounters are tricky that way. This divides into two CRPG design camps. One is sandbox focused and the other is purely strategist. The sandbox player may love metagame hacking, micromanagement, gimmicks, glitches, and sudden power spikes owing to non-linear itemization that largely defines these early games. The strategist is not necessarily opposed to those things, but they come closer to the game design principles championed by Pillars of Eternity, where balance and consistency take some precedence over experimentation. Yet SES is still an interesting mod because even when you set it up to the highest difficulty, the one most adverse to bending around the rule set, it still retains that crossover between Brood War and Baldur's Gate. Despite introducing a few problems like characters falling into tank and healing paradigms, that still doesn't matter, because even weakling mage cleric characters like Eric can become a tank with the right equipment and spells. Keeping in pace with the CRPG tradition is an entirely personal, spiritual, and ultimately beautiful experience. Anything goes. Your imagination is more limited than the mechanics. No wonder a culture so hostile to individualism and self-creation spin the aforementioned copy pasta into a meme. They refuse to engage with anything not codified in the approval network of social autonomy. Such normies and herd-like beings are not the target audience of this video. I am, in fact, well equipped to attack them with words that may fly above their heads or at least make them groan at perceived pretentiousness. All the better. It is a recent trend within the industry atmosphere to designate certain introduction levels and mechanics as filters. I throw many filter spots throughout my content and shall continue to do so. I write for the people who want to transcend culture as much as possible, not for those who want their biases to be confirmed, their happenstance moods placated and assuaged. Echoing Zarathustra, you cannot endure yourselves and do not love yourselves enough. Now you want to seduce your neighbor to love and then gild yourselves with his error. Would that you could not endure all sorts of neighbors and their neighbors, then you would have to create your friend and his overflowing heart out of yourselves. One man goes to his neighbor because he seeks himself, another because he would lose himself. Your bad love of yourselves turns your solitude into a prison. It is those farther away who must pay for your love of your neighbor. And even if 5 of you together, there is always the 6th who must die. I do not love your festivals either. I found too many actors there, and the spectators too often behaved like actors. Yet I do not mean to participate in empty gatekeeping, instead an open elitism that invites people to become ascended ballspawn as well. It turns out that mastering games like Dark Souls and Baldur's Gate 2 are only superficially complicated. They have distinct flows and polymeters that the player will have to, as if they could hear movement, listen to the spatial patterns fed not only to their eyes, but your holistic nervous system. There is a way of applying easy heuristics and simplifying that which is complicated, which will get you by 99.9% of the time. As Nietzsche notes in Human All Too Human, do not speak to me about giftedness of inborn talents. One can name great men of all kinds who are very little gifted. They all possess that seeriness of the efficient workman which first learns to construct the parts properly before it ventures to fashion a great whole. We will, in fact, be inversing the approach recommended by Nietzsche, but preserving its spirit. It is through letting the whole seamlessly reduce itself into parts that the unapproachable becomes familiar. Zhuangzi has a more apt description when commenting on a butcher who cuts with the way, slicing perfect cuts and never dulling his knife. Cook Ding laid down his knife and said, "What I care about is the way, which goes beyond skill." When I first began cutting up oxen, all I could see was the ox itself. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole ox, and now I go at it by spirit and don't look with my eyes. Perception and understanding have come to a stop, and spirit moves where it wants. I go along with the natural makeup, strike in the big hollows, and guide the knife through the big openings, and follow things as they are. So I never touch the smallest ligament or tendon, much less a main joint. Let's elaborate on what that looks like for Baldur's Gate 2. You may have noticed that CRPGs have a threatening aura surrounding them. The UI may be beautifully decorated, yet it is cluttered with superficial complexity. Auto-attacking enemies in sight doesn't necessarily provide good results. Reducing the difficulty slider or giving into story mode doesn't feel satisfying either. So first of all, don't overcomplicate it. I've been playing titles like Baldur's Gate 2 for years, and I will be using encounters from this game as a skeleton map that is applicable across a wide range of RPGs, from modern CRPG takes like Pillars of Eternity to even more streamlined titles like Dragon Age Inquisition. You see all these numbers and stats? Don't fuss over them. I do not know all the ins and outs of any Dungeons & Dragons rule set. I have simply codified general rules and developed strong intuitions that guide moment-to-moment gameplay. For example, you may notice that in Baldur's Gate 2, your characters have an armor class that is modified by armor and other items in the game. Perhaps counterintuitively, and this will apply to only CRPGs using the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2 system, the lower your armor class, the better. As a base variable, that is true of this game. Otherwise, number go up is often number is better. Here we are introducing a simple condition. In this specific instance, number go down is better. There are, of course, exceptions and trade-offs in any mechanically engaging CRPG. Perhaps a piece of armor has special desirable stats, but doesn't give you the best armor class for a specific character. Yet you can throw those two out of your mind. It is perfectly viable to ignore the overwhelming majority of rules and get along just fine. Why is this the case? The first reason is that optimization is not the same as viability. What will make your character a complete powerhouse is distinct from what will allow you to clear the game without feeling handicapped by your equipment set and character build. You can make all sorts of mistakes and suboptimal decisions and clear a game perfectly well without going beyond something resembling the core rules difficulty, where core rules tend to be true to the pen and paper rule set, but keep in mind that a computer is automating strict rules here. A human dungeon master may modify that on the fly. As such, this is not necessarily the intended or ideal experience. All you need to do is pay attention to visual feedback. Depending on the game you're playing, a message log, an explicit number, or a character line will tell you something important. In Baldur's Gate 2, a classic example is hearing a character say, "My weapon has no effect." This tends to mean that a character is immune to a certain type of damage or can only be hit by weapons of a base rate quality. This seemingly frustrating mechanic isn't all that painful. As I've said, don't overcomplicate it. When you see or hear these visual cues, it often means that you should escape and live to fight another day. These games tend to be incredibly open-ended, allowing you to escape side quest chains and isolated encounters at will, very rarely locking into a linear pathway from which there is no escape. And when that is done, it is usually obvious through in-game dialogue or a very dramatic story beat. As you're playing the game itself, you will find yourself automatically overcoming these difficulties without even conceptualizing the exact solution to your problem. However, we shouldn't limit ourselves to immersive learning. We should still formalize a few tricks. Here we place down Zhuangzi to pick up our aforementioned definition of Aristotelian science, to then kick them both down the ladder until all we are left with is purest form. Your ability to play around with dynamics that emerge from otherwise rigid mechanics can be your saving grace. Whether this means healing through damage with excessive spells and healing potions, or pausing the game and micromanaging your units to safe or seemingly optimal pathways in the encounter space, notice that these games always encourage experimentation, calling to mind one important lesson: death is not a bad thing, it is not a failure. There is no character judgment communicated to you from the game developer. You are not meant to be frustrated by any and every failed encounter. There are always opportunities to learn more about the game, your preferred playstyle, and the lore context in which your player characters are currently engaged. An excessively difficult encounter may be a sign that you do not yet belong in a specific area. Divinity Original Sin softly suggests an optimal path using this kind of feedback. Enemies tend to be more difficult and obviously higher level in certain areas. This allows experienced players to tackle more challenging areas first to give them more conundrums to work through, while providing newcomers a gently guided and linear progression pathway that isn't too punishing. Yet these design decisions are not always obvious. Remember that CRPGs are about exploration and creativity. If you have ventured into a lair of beholders in keeping with Baldur's Gate 2 and have nothing like an obvious counter to their incredibly powerful psionic attacks, that is a sign that you are missing something, such as specific spells, items, or simply high enough character levels to brute force your way through the damage. It is not meant to communicate that you suck or some meanified get good message. It instead calls back to an era of video gaming where smooth progression was not prioritized. Indeed, facing friction when progressing through a video game was functionally important for getting the bang for your buck. If a game of undetermined length and content depth wasn't giving you puzzles, whether visual or mechanical, it may have felt, in a bygone era, like it was mocking your purchase. The contemporary idea that friction equals wasted time is one that is challenged by CRPG history and their present-day revivals. A game like Baldur's Gate 2 allows for free-form positioning and spur-of-the-moment tactical changes. It has the mechanical and kinesthetic feel of StarCraft 1, same too its utterly unique character versatility, while staying perfectly in line with the tactics-based mechanical system shared by any title in the CRPG genre. Much like how a zealot from Brood War can kite characters around a pylon in ways that allow the unit to transcend its statistical boundaries, Baldur's Gate 2 allows you to treat your characters and the entities they summon the exact same way. If the dice rolls are not in your favor, you always have access to what the AI does not: complete spatial awareness. This is highlighted by the fact that these games are either fully turn-based or feature real-time with pause, in either case allowing you ample time to interrupt the frenetic flow of combat, mentally recover, and adjust your next few steps. It is not difficult to get into this seemingly niche activity we call micromanaging. As always, it is about creativity burning within your soul. Click around the terrain and see what happens. A dash of trial and error has never harmed anybody in a video game, not anyone absent extreme anger issues anyway, and taoistically learning to embrace the journey is a lesson not just applicable to niche video games, but your entire life as well. This has birthed numerous critiques of revival titles like Pillars of Eternity, which, depending on your perspective, benefits or suffers from the design philosophy of Josh Sawyer, a jaded veteran of the RPG and D&D genres who has many critiques of traditionalist and hardcore mindsets. For a Josh Sawyer game, one that is modified by what RPG Codex calls Sawyerism, there are less overt ways to mechanically cheat your way out of encounters. The effectiveness of micromanagement is limited, metagame hacking is discouraged, and min-max player builds are virtually non-existent. Yet even in a Sawyer-type game, we can strain against the limitations and shackles placed upon us by game developers. Remember that you are existing in a fairly simple 3D space with routine and predictable rules. From player motion to enemy statistics, you can adjust your approach from art to science based upon your very whim, winging it with a few mental notes, or reducing the game down to its technical parts. No matter what you do, it is important to keep in mind that you have more control over the experience than you think. Always. Your typical CRPG has a wide array of potential companions spread throughout the story and map. While it is an RPG constant for some companions to just be utter trash tier, no matter what class composition you desire, it is not uncommon for people to look up the locations of party members, their stats, and orient their early game playstyle toward acquiring them quickly. In a game like Baldur's Gate, where experience gains are non-unitary and absent party members do not gain XP in your stead, this can all feel the more important. Note that, however, you're not playing an MMO. There is no dedicated tank, healer, and DPS role. Not only can everyone substitute each role for the other depending on precise context, but rarely do you need anything resembling a tank. It's not uncommon to have 4 frontline melee fighters, or 3 mages, or 3 clerics. The synergy you create is not a predetermined outlet of discrete roles. What matters is how you use each companion, ensuring their abilities are relevant to upcoming encounters, a fact you may only learn by falling into the encounter themselves, and constructing a clock in your brain, that ethereal sense which says a companion has been idle or auto-attacking too long. You should see if they can do even more. CRPGs are well known for their non-linear approach to itemization. While it is a number games at heart, many times unique properties of the item are more important than base rate stats. For example, Belm from Baldur's Gate 2 is only a +2 weapon, though it grants you an extra attack per round. For those proficient in scimitars, this is often a preferred weapon, switching to or enchanting their weapon as +3 when truly needed. Once more, feel free to look up item lists on the search engine. It may be that a beneficial item perfect for your party composition is only one direction west, some discursive encounter away. Propelling its soul spheres forward in time, arriving at resonating titles like Morrowind, Baldur's Gate promises a loose gameplay structure. Anything goes. creativity defines the gameplay. The gameplay does not desire to cap your own desire for experimentation. Contemporary CRPGs would embrace this aspect of the genre to sharply different degrees. Pillars of Eternity prefers more linear and finely tuned progression. Divinity Original Sin is an open challenge for any combat system to be more creative and spectacle-driven than its environmentally sensitive and combo-flaring festival of violence. People impress much weight into every mechanic that catches their eye, any superficial piece of information threatening to flood their brain. One shouldn't take the Taoistic lesson that the conscious mind is noise, more useless than beneficial compared to subconscious muscle and skill. Letting go of your preconceptions, be it choice anxiety or aversion to character death, is the key to mastering just about any skill, not just CRPGs. This is why the aforementioned copy-pasted quote, maligned as it is, could not be more apt. Transferable lessons are imminent within video games, but a cultural firewall prevents us from bridging this socio-metaphysical gap. It is time to close them into one. Everything we have talked about thus far describes a perfect circle, a circumferent oracle around the life diachronic of Irenicus. His journey through life ticks off all the bullet points I've marked: a refusal to let go, fetishization for inborn talent, excessive attachment to lost social and ethic status, sapping all creativity and joy out of existence in the name of brute scientific pursuit for an instrumental goal. Irenicus allows history to weigh him down. Rather than discovering how he can transcend his moral condition as the Shattered One, whether through acceptance or a radical rejection of its connotations, Irenicus falls into the semiotic game that the higher elves were over-tonally expressing. He can only speak the language of power and divinity. Revenge is his spoken ugly answer that is more friendly to the elven cradle of comfort than they would admit. Their utopia admits no friction, no dissent, no malevolence of a demonic sort. As such, it cannot tolerate dynamic change. It has learned love of thy neighbor, but only to despise what is farthest from it. The elves in the South Arena are not wholly to blame for the Shattered One and his machinations, but they participate in the same political structure which makes beings like him all but inevitable. As Nietzsche commented on the highly flawed yet admirable traits of Napoleon and Caesar, evil actions belong to the most powerful, bad, base ones to the subjected. The most powerful man, the creator, would have to be the most evil, inasmuch as he carries his ideal against the ideals of other men, and remakes them in his own image. Evil here means hard, painful, enforced. Such men as Napoleon must come again and again to confirm the aristocracy of the individual, but he himself was corrupted by the means he had to employ and lost noblesse of character. If he had to prevail among a different kind of man, he could have employed other means, and thus it would not seem necessary for a Caesar to become bad. So too is there a reverse domestication process in all would-be domesticators, or as Nietzsche termed them, the improvers of mankind. Not only do they become one and the same with the cultural mass, his Zarathustra is quick to remind us that the role of shepherd implies debased involvement with sheep, but for all their efforts, they leave scars on people they seek to improve in their own image, a self-reflection which has been distorted by exposure to raw collectivity. This is where liberal and anarchic undercurrents in Nietzsche as a radical aristocrat goes underappreciated. It is not in the business of higher spirits to rule others, that only bends them toward a common rule, weakening magister and subjugate alike. Irenicus is a would-be storm raging across the heavens, but he allows his social condition to paint his mind with colors alien to himself. To capture the previous Nietzschean sentiment, it was socially necessary for the Shattered One to become bad, subjugated. Having lived a life obsessed with power, well respected among the most capable mages in Soledad Nessalar, he was seduced by the dark whispers of his sibling Bodhi. Playing on his growing ego, the two began a mutual spiral toward destruction. By the time we meet Irenicus, he had already lived a hard life of exile. Having tried to take the power of the world tree that enshrines elven immortality and divinity for himself, he was ultimately banished by the lover of his life, Queen Elizine. Not only was he cast out, but he was stripped of his elven constitution and forced to live like a mutated human. This is why we wake up to dark and twisted experiments in his magical labyrinth. While his sister Bodhi turned to vampirism as a way to hold on to power and defy mortality, Irenicus delved deeper into a life full of study and grim obsession. To quote Cybreed, my Bible, we shine to finally dissolve into oblivion and be absolved through death, all culminating in his theater play to strip Baal's essence from you and, in a plot twist for the game, also your de facto sister, Imoen. He takes over Spellhold, and is captured by the cowled wizards is revealed to have been a contingency plan of his, a way to isolate Imoen from the party and cement a base of operations. Should you have taken Yoshima with you for the journey, his treason is revealed, and though he may feel the pain of regret due to developed camaraderie, his fate is sealed. Irenicus would simply kill him if he doesn't comply. The Shadow Thieves had dealings with Irenicus in the past, but always suspected treachery. This is the fulcrum upon which the Guild War turns. A vampiric faction are rapidly converting Shadow Thieves, willingly or unwillingly, to their cause, but leaders of both organizations promise to help you search for Imoen and Irenicus for a pretty penny, and the indignity of doing dirty work for them. All of this is a facade for what they're really doing, evaluating your strengths, your work, the murderous talent sparked within. Neither faction is exactly digestible for good characters and paladin characters, leading to some misguided critiques that the game doesn't allow them to truly roleplay. All I can say to that is roleplaying doesn't require controlling every world variable around you. Having your principles and creeds tested against the tides of history is an interesting opportunity for roleplaying if I've ever seen one. Keeping in pace with Zarathustra, of all evil I deem you capable, therefore I want the good from you. Verily, I have often laughed at the weaklings who thought themselves good because they had no claws. You shall strive after the virtue of the column. It grows more and more beautiful and gentle, but internally harder and more enduring as it ascends. For this is the sole secret, for only when the hero has abandoned her, she is approached by the overhero.
You came too late. Didn't I say you would come too late? You will learn to trust me. Don't be afraid. You are safe here, if you behave. I will show you what fills the void. What is now free. I lurk behind your soul in the very fiber of your being. I am the only thing left when mind and reason are stripped away. I will show you what you can be, what you can do, if you simply let yourself become what you are. I can show you all of this because I am within. I am what fills the void. I am you. You are to be given a gift. It is a valuable prize. One that you had better appreciate. You worry for your comrades, perhaps? Leave them, abandon them, and become what you must. There is great power in your heritage. Use it, and you will become closer to who you are. What you could be. Feel what is in the void. Use the tools that you are given. Become part of something greater. I am in you, and I know what is best. Each time you use it, each time you accept it, you move a little closer to the evil within. Perhaps you lose yourself in the end, but you will go to greater reward than you can know. After all, what does an eternity of nothingness matter when you can destroy all that would oppose your development as easy as one? 2. 3. 4. 5.
Adventures mysterious and magical still await the Ballspawn. From uncovering illicit plots to scouring the Underdark and investigating habitual tanners who flay humans alive, all of these tonally black distractions converge upon one path where, as one interesting NPC you meet in the de facto insane asylum, Spellhold says, Irenicus?
Zhuangzi,
which leads into my favorite and perhaps the most misunderstood plot point in the whole series. You are stripped of Baal's essence, the spark of divinity within you, which has two consequences, one causal and the other diachronical. The first effect is that the instinct survives. As already seen, the mark of Baal lurks behind the spawn's soul, manifesting itself when substance has outrun form. Surviving Bodhi's labyrinthian thrill-seeking hunt and all but scaring her away after involuntarily becoming the Slayer, an avatar of murder, was the result of this perverted alchemical process. Another is that it reveals how much second nature dominates over nature. As Irenicus once said by way of dreams, "You rest each night uneasy, yes, you are weary. You struggle daily. It will not end, you know, not until you acknowledge what you are." It is that all-too-mortal struggle upon which Irenicus lambasts that which writes his own death sentence. Nietzschean overcoming reveals itself to be a power higher than the divinity, and while you are certainly facing dire consequences from having your soul stripped from you, it only urges you to progress onward, to solidify your strength. Having liberated the mad denizens of Spellhold and amassed an amusing army against Irenicus, this lesson imprints itself as Irenicus is overwhelmed in a frustrating twirl of arcane chaos. You can hear the impotent and indignant rage in his voice as he relinquishes Spellhold to the Bellspawn, hoping that it is our grave. The Shattered One may have restored Bodhi and himself by way of Baal's essence, but cannot replace what has been etched into the memory, the subconscious. He would implicitly speak that lesson in a penultimate endgame event, lamenting the impact of naturalistic causes and how, even in a world where supernatural beings reign, there is no escaping history and conditioning.
No, Jonalith, you shall not.
Who? Elasim?
Yes, it is I, your queen. Twice now you have attempted this sacrilege, and nearly destroyed us all. You will not do this again, Jonalith.
Do not call me that. I lost all right to that name when the Saldarine stripped me of everything that was elven, as you well know.
And what shall I call you instead? Irenicus? Shattered One? Yes, it was a terrible punishment, but you violated everything we hold dear. You nearly destroyed us all. And for what? Power? Is that all you exist for now, John?
It is all I have now, Elasim. There is nothing else beyond my revenge. Revenge for what you did to me, that the Saldarine did to me.
And your revenge has poisoned your heart. The tree touched you once long ago. Do you remember nothing of it? Is there nothing in your heart that remembers love? Is there nothing within you that remembers our love? What we once shared before this obsession doomed you?
I do not remember your love, Elasim. I've tried to recreate it, to spark it anew in my memory, but it is gone. A hollow, dead thing. For years I clung to the memory of it. Then the memory of the memory, and then nothing. The Saldarine took that from me too. I look upon you and feel nothing. I remember nothing but you turning your back on me along with all the others. Once my thirst for power was everything, and now I hunger only for revenge. And I will have it!
Then I pity you. Would that you had used your stolen mortal years to earn your return to this sacred place. I could have loved you anew as I loved the man you once were. But I see nothing of him here. You are Irenicus, and all that awaits you now is death.
We shall see, my former love. We shall see.
Bodhi has marked herself for death, hiding in the vampire lair from where you originally met her in Chapter 2. There is a brilliant kind of desperation in her voice, and Irenicus notes in his journal at Spellhold that her restored soul quietly laments the creature she has become, although she overtly embraces the depravity of vampirism despite that. Purging Bodhi from this world and herself from her own suffering restores Imoen's soul. Just as Irenicus prioritized Bodhi by giving Imoen spiritual essence first, the Ballspawn does the same. A touching parallel. Siblings supporting each other across planes forgotten to time. We have explored cities lost to sea and myth, subverted a Drala pact that would shake the foundations of soul-shattering. Yet those are contingencies, extra strokes of revenge for Irenicus. He has been seething in this monotonal emotion long enough that he is empty inside, a phantom being waiting to die. He is obsessed with death and its causes, which is no accident. In the Shattered One's quest to regain immortality, he has died 1,000 times. One should pity him, not as a justified or sympathetic antagonist, but as an all-too-human villain. His sense of justice does not meet third-person objective criteria, blinded as he is by prejudice and pride, and so the Ballspawn and their chosen companion to wage a fantastical assault against his forces polluting soul-shattering. When we finally meet him, the distinction between being and becoming collapses before his very eyes. A person stripped of everything that made them quote-unquote special and talented is standing against him, deadly, threatening, a harbinger of nature. This is where our Nietzschean love of becoming and our Platonist championing of being finds themselves in tension, but Zhuangzi is here to dissolve the distinction. There is a beginning. There is a not yet beginning to be a beginning. There is a not yet beginning to be a not yet beginning to be a beginning. There is being. There is non-being. There is not yet beginning to be non-being. There is a not yet beginning to be a not yet beginning to be non-being. Suddenly there is being and non-being. But between this being and non-being, I don't really know which is being and non-being. If by moving from non-being to being, we get to 3, how far will we get if we move from being to being? Better not to move, but to let things be. A form never chases away its own shadow, and 20th century continental philosophers discovering radical contingency as if it were new is no threat to contemporary and ancient Platonism. The Shattered One beholds the Ballspawn in purest form, crystallized by the cruel motions of space. The killing blow is mutual, and since Irenicus has tasted of Ball's spirit, he descends with us to one of his abyssal realms, hell in every sense. Our moment of triumph has found its finalized, darker twist. Obsidian games like Knights of the Old Republic 2 and Mask of the Betrayer would further explore the consequences of, quite literally, dragging others to hell with you. Trial 7 we face, born of sacrifice and self-preservation. You can choose to permanently debuff your character stats, or else have a companion character die in your place. It is a moment that asks commitment to not only your D&D character sheet, but how you answer the evil within. A good or neutral character finds solidification and purpose in resisting their nature, whereas an immortal character is more likely to surrender to its tainted power. One mechanical representation of this is becoming the Slayer at will, a latent talent activated by your soul being distanced from corporeal form. Your lowered reputation score, which affects how NPCs react to you, same too quest rewards and shop prices, is symbolic of drawing further into its madness. Each time you use it, you sacrifice your very selfhood for power. After meeting the abyssal remnant of our deceased brother, Saravok, and enduring the depths of hell, we face off with Irenicus one more time, who has had to go through his own spiritual trial to meet you for this battle beyond worlds. The fight is quite beefy, particularly with the Sword Coast Stratagems mod installed, but inevitably Irenicus is slayed. The Ballspawn regains her soul. Our very surroundings collapse around us, as we awaken the comfort of a relatively restored soul-shattering. I have to note that there is a missed opportunity here. While this would all but preempt the story-wrapping Throne of Ball expansion, I would have liked a darker ending. One where, first of all, the original plan explained by David Gator in 2000 was that Imoen would become the Slayer and we'd have to strike her down. Secondly, there would be no escaping hell, at least not yet. Much like how the Doomslayer walked the pits of torment for countless aeons, or the protagonist of the first Diablo game lived the life of a wanderer containing a malevolent spirit, it would be interesting to have a more somber epilogue about the Ballspawn. She and her companions who walk the blackest plains, paying the ultimate price to restore one's soul. It would be a tonally fitting ending and would recruit some of the cheesier writing moments found in the upcoming expansion. We will not be talking about that here, however, for it reserves its own narrative function in upcoming videos on the periphery of the Affinity Engine RPGs. We have engaged in light exegesis of Nietzsche as a de facto liberal author. terrorized the normies with trollist Zhuangzi passages, faced eye tyrants and demons, scoured the depths of hell, and analyzed the Shattered One's entirely sui generis spirit. Baldur's Gate 2 is an extremely long game, and you can feel the immersion it weighs on you with each playthrough, that you've just played through a great epic, a myth destined to live on as some foundational pillar of nascent gaming culture. We have learned that failure is not equivalent to defeat, that suffering is the spice of all life, and second nature may, with entrained muscle and skill, transcend even divinity. The world is ugly and cruel. Demiurgic evil surrounds us, but by immersing ourselves in its celestial plays, we can learn to overcome its tainted and abyssal chaos. We have delved into multi-dimensional layers of trauma, with each character in the setting communicating an important aspect of it. How ironic that a game so filled with these themes would be discarded as woke and social justice by the right-wing bugman herd in today's era. Baldur's Gate 2 is an important slice of gamer mythology, and one should pay religious reverence to it from time to time with an actual playthrough, opening your heart and throwing away your attachments to contemporary trends. The kinesthetic dance of the pseudo-archaic awaits you. Thus begins my de facto Tales of Torment series, a look into the unitary themes of politicized suffering shared between titles like Baldur's Gate 2, Planescape Torment, and Knights of the Old Republic 2. It is full speed ahead from here onward. As such, I would like to thank my Patreon subscribers who have made this possible. To people such as Sereneste, Epingur, Gustav Schial, Effibrew, Palomar, Fall from Space, Thanatos, Rania Hao, an acknowledgement to those who remained anonymous alongside everyone else who has helped me weather the financial storm across the years.
Did you come here for answers? There are none. The call of Korriban is strong, but it is the call of the dead.